What if the daughter you trusted most was the one helping your killer unlock the door? That was the terrifying possibility investigators were forced to consider after the brutal double homicide that shook Hollywood to its core. Two legends, gone in one night. Rob Reiner, 78. Michelle Reiner, 70. Found stabbed to death in their own Brentwood mansion. But the headline that stopped America cold? It wasn't just their son Nick Reiner, age 32, who was arrested that night. It was the whispers that followed, the name that kept surfacing, the person no one wanted to believe could be involved. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Tracy Reiner, adoptive daughter, actress, mother, and now, alleged accomplice. The mansion on Rockingham Drive. Let's take you there. It was Sunday evening. Sunset had washed Los Angeles in gold, and the Brentwood breeze swayed the sycamore trees. The Reiners' $13.5 million estate stood silent behind tall hedges and an iron gate. Its silence was eerie, unnatural. By 8:13 p.m., that silence was broken. A scream echoed down Rockingham Drive. That scream belonged to 27-year-old Romy Reiner, the youngest child of Rob and Michelle. According to LAPD dispatch, she had arrived to check in on her parents after receiving a disturbing message from her brother Nick earlier that day. What she found inside would later be described by officers as a scene that rivals Hollywood horror. Her father, Rob, was found collapsed near the library entrance, his face pale, his hands marked with defensive wounds, and a knife embedded in his lower abdomen. Michelle lay slumped against the foyer staircase, her blouse soaked in red, her face frozen in a final look of betrayal. Neither had a pulse, but the killer had not vanished into thin air. The arrest nobody doubted at first. Just hours later, Nick Reiner was found pacing shirtless outside the guest house, disoriented, shaking, and mumbling about cleansing the legacy. Police took him into custody without incident, and the world watched, stunned but unsurprised. Nick's history was no secret: addiction battles, public meltdowns, failed rehab stints. His book, Chasing Happiness, once a New York Times bestseller, now read like a cry for help ignored too long. No one questioned the arrest, until someone did. Have you spoken to Tracy? That question came not from a detective, not from a journalist. It came from Romy. 3 hours into her police interview, she turned to one of the lead investigators and asked flatly, "Have you spoken to Tracy?" The room went silent. When pressed, Romy wouldn't elaborate. She simply repeated, "You need to look at Tracy's messages. Start there." That single sentence shattered the idea that this was just a tragic act by a troubled son. It cracked open a deeper mystery, a darker layer, one the family had tried, desperately, to hide. Who is Tracy Reiner, really? Most people know her as the smiling brunette from A League of Their Own. Hollywood royalty, the adopted daughter of the great Rob Reiner, the granddaughter of Carl Reiner, a woman who built her life in the shadow of fame and turned it into something uniquely her own. But behind that carefully cultivated public image is a story few know. Tracy was born Tracy Henry, the biological daughter of Penny Marshall and Michael Henry. When Penny married Rob Reiner in 1971, Rob adopted Tracy as his own. The marriage didn't last, but Rob remained Tracy's legal father, raising her as part of the Reiner clan. By all appearances, Tracy was the grounded one, the professional, the steady hand in a turbulent family. Until she vanished. The silence after the sirens. In the chaos that followed the murders, reporters and paparazzi crowded outside the Reiner estate. Theories flew. Tributes poured in. But there was one glaring omission. Where was Tracy? She hadn't posted. She hadn't spoken to press. No public statement. No Instagram tribute. No mention of her father's death. Nothing. And that silence became deafening. Because while the world mourned Rob and Michelle, detectives were turning over new pieces of the puzzle. And each one kept pointing to the same unexpected name. A sister, a daughter, a potential accomplice. The envelope that changed everything. According to internal LAPD sources, 3 days after the arrest, a manila envelope was delivered to the Wilshire Division Precinct. No return address. No fingerprints. Inside was a single flash drive, labeled, simply, TR. What was on it? That hasn't been officially released. But unofficially, rumors are loud. Too loud to ignore. One detective reportedly described the contents as career-ending, family-destroying, and unsettling. And the very next morning, Tracy's name was quietly added to the case file. Not as a victim, not as a witness, as a person of interest. A pattern of manipulation? As investigators dug deeper, they began to uncover patterns in Tracy's past. Visits to Nick during his rehab stints, often unrecorded. Cash withdrawals made on his behalf. Mysterious wire transfers between accounts in both their names. One psychiatric file from 2019 reportedly includes an alarming entry made by a therapist treating Nick. Client claims Sister Tracy understands his mission and shares the same rage about the lie they've lived. Strong indications of shared delusion, risk to self and others if unaddressed. Let that sink in. Not a therapist speculating. A therapist warning. Why this story matters now. This isn't just a Hollywood tragedy. It's a case that's cracking open the mythology of celebrity families. It's pulling back the curtain on what happens when power, fame, mental illness, and silence collide. Because if Tracy Reiner, beloved daughter, actress, mother of 5, truly had a hand in this unthinkable act, what else don't we know about the families we think we understand? What happens when the person you trust most isn't who they claim to be? One last phone call. According to phone records subpoenaed by police, Tracy received a call from Romy just 23 minutes before the 911 call was placed. She didn't pick up. She never called back. That unanswered call may hold the key to everything. But that's just the beginning. Because what investigators found next, buried in a storage box in Rob Reiner's study, would blow this case wide open. And for the first time ever, we'll show you what it was. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What do you see when you walk into a home soaked in silence, but screaming with something you can't see? For Officer Daniels, it was the smell that hit first, not the floral hint of expensive candles or freshly cleaned hardwood. No, this was different. A metallic bite. Sharp. Sour. Blood has a smell. And when it's fresh, it lets you know you're not welcome. The front door was unlocked. 8:11 p.m. Romy Reiner pulls into the circular driveway of the Brentwood estate. Her hands tremble slightly. She's been trying to reach both of her parents all day. No answer. Nick sent her a message earlier. Just one line. You'll thank me when it's over. What does that even mean? She rings the bell. No answer. She knocks. Still nothing. Then, she does what she's never done before. She pushes open the front door. It's unlocked. The house that wasn't a home. Brentwood is full of mansions, but the Reiners' estate? It had a presence. Built in 1929, remodeled in 2003, it fused old Hollywood charm with sharp modern edges. Tall ceilings, white marble, expansive staircases, and Art Deco light fixtures that cast long, dramatic shadows even in daylight. But that night, everything felt off. The lights were on, but the house felt dark. The air conditioning was running, but the air was cold in all the wrong ways. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was loaded. Romy called out once. No answer. She stepped into the foyer. Her heels clicked against the floor. That's when she noticed the smear. A dark streak on the tile. Her voice cracked. Mom. No reply. She turned toward the library. And then she screamed. Rob Reiner, the final scene. He was lying just feet from his beloved bookcase. Face up, eyes partially open. One arm raised, as if in defense. The other tucked under his body in an unnatural bend. There was blood, so much blood, pooled beneath him, smeared across the floor like someone tried to drag him. Or crawl. His shirt was torn open, a deep wound beneath his ribs. This wasn't a heart attack. This was rage. Precision. Intent. Romy froze. The only sound in the room was her own rapid breathing. And then, another shadow. Another body. She turned. Michelle Reiner, a mother's last reach. Michelle wasn't far. Slumped halfway up the staircase, her legs twisted, her head tilted back. Her mouth was slightly open, as if still trying to say something. One hand stretched outward, fingers curled mid-reach. Toward Rob? Toward help? A crimson trail led down the stairs. She didn't fall. She crawled. There was a knife on the 5th step. Clean. Too clean. But Michelle's blouse was soaked through. Her left side had been pierced, slashed, or both. Details that would later be confirmed in the autopsy. Romy didn't move for nearly a minute. Then the scream tore out of her throat. and the call to 911 followed. They're dead. They're both dead. The recording of the 911 call was later played in court. It began with sobbing, hyperventilation, then a sudden shift, a chilling moment of clarity in Romy's voice. My brother was here. He was here earlier today. Please, please, check the guest house. Oh my God, Nick. Oh my God. The dispatcher tried to keep her calm. Officers were dispatched immediately. By 8:24 p.m., LAPD officers arrived. 3 minutes later, they made contact with Nick Reiner. He wasn't in the main house. He was standing barefoot outside the guest house, holding a garden trowel, covered in something dark. Nick Reiner's arrest. When the police approached, Nick didn't resist. He didn't run. He didn't fight. He didn't cry. He simply said, "It's done. That's it." Just 2 words. Officer Daniels recalled thinking, is this some kind of psychotic break? Nick's pupils were dilated. His shirt had been ripped, his knuckles scraped, but no defensive wounds. No blood on his arms. Was he the killer? Or did he clean up for someone else? Police detained him on the spot. He was silent during transport. No emotion. No remorse. But later, in the interrogation room, he began mumbling, talking to someone who wasn't there. She said it'd be fast. We had to finish it. The lion's here. She'll take care of it from here. Who was he talking about? That's what detectives wanted to know. And one name kept surfacing from those incoherent mutterings. Not Michelle. Not Romy. Tracy. A note tucked in Rob's pocket. During the investigation, as forensic teams combed through the house, they made an unexpected discovery. Inside Rob Reiner's breast pocket, partially soaked in blood, was a small, folded piece of paper. Handwritten. A note. The ink was smeared, but forensic imaging recovered the text. I should have seen this coming. He wasn't alone. I pray it's not true, but if it is, tell Romy. She deserves the truth. It wasn't signed. But the handwriting matched a sample of Rob's journal entries found upstairs. Rob wrote this note before he died, which means he saw them. He knew. And he believed his killer wasn't working alone. The crime scene details they didn't release to the public. There were things the LAPD never shared with the press. Here's what leaked from internal sources. 2 sets of footprints in the blood trail leading toward the kitchen. One smaller than Nick's shoe size. A strand of dark hair caught in Rob's cuff. Female, confirmed not to be Michelle or Romy. A second knife missing from the set, never recovered. A cigarette, but on the back patio, Tracy smokes. No one else in the house did. A faint outline of a shoe print near the side gate, Italian-made. Female, size 8. Each one of these clues, on their own, meant little. Together, they pointed to something chilling. Someone else was there. And whoever it was, wasn't a stranger. Romy's second interview. Romy sat with investigators again, hours after her initial statement. She'd had time to cry, to process, to think. And this time, her words were sharper, more focused. She said Nick had been spiraling for weeks, that he felt betrayed by the family, that he kept ranting about cover-ups and replacing truths with lies. But then she dropped the bomb. He kept saying Tracy gets it. That Tracy knew. She paused, then added, she was here 3 days ago. I saw her. They went for a walk. I thought it was just a sibling thing. Now I'm not sure. Investigators leaned in. Romy looked them dead in the eye. You need to check her messages. She's not who you think she is. A message that never got sent. In the hours after the murders, while police swarmed the house, Romy's phone was seized for evidence. They were looking for Nick's texts. But what they found was something else. A draft message. And signed. Never sent. It read, I told them about Tracy. I'm sorry. I couldn't keep lying. The timestamp? 30 minutes before the 911 call. The neighbor's security footage. One final detail closed the loop. The neighbor directly behind the Reiner's estate had recently installed a Ring camera facing their own side alley, which coincidentally captured a slice of the Reiner's property. At 7:46 p.m., just 25 minutes before the 911 call, the footage showed something unusual. A figure, slender, wearing a long coat, hair pulled back, walking calmly toward the side gate. The resolution wasn't perfect, but one detail stood out. A large leather handbag, red, with a gold clasp. A model previously seen on Tracy's Instagram. But what detectives found next, hidden inside Michelle's bedroom drawer, would change everything they thought they knew. And this time, there would be no way to deny the connection. What if the person everyone trusts is the one no one truly knows? That question sat at the center of the investigation like a splinter no one could pull out. Because after the blood, after the arrest, after the shock faded just enough for logic to creep back in, detectives weren't asking how a son could do this. They were asking something far more unsettling. Who was Tracy Reiner, really? Not the actress. Not the smiling red carpet presence. Not the carefully curated public image. But the woman behind the doors no one ever saw close. The clue that forced the question was simple. Too simple. While the estate was in chaos, while Romy was shaking through interviews, while Nick sat in custody spiraling between silence and incoherence, Tracy didn't show up. No rush to the house. No call to detectives. No visible grief. Just absence. And absence, in a case like this, is never neutral. The public Tracy. On paper, Tracy's life looked orderly, admiration-worthy, almost boring. An actress with steady work, known for small but memorable roles. A mother of 5. A woman who'd spoken openly about family, resilience, and mental health. Someone who understood Hollywood without being consumed by it. Friends described her as calm, grounded, observant. She was the fixer, one acquaintance would later say. If something went wrong in that family, Tracy handled it. That sentence would echo through the case like a drumbeat. Because fixers don't panic. They plan. The adoption that changed everything. Tracy was adopted into the Reiner family as a child, a moment that, on the surface, looked like a rescue. A new last name. A powerful father figure. A seat at one of Hollywood's most influential tables. But insiders tell a different story. They say Tracy never quite felt chosen. She felt placed. Like a puzzle piece slid into a picture that was already framed. She wasn't Rob's biological child. She wasn't Michelle's daughter at all. She was family. But always slightly off-center. And when Rob remarried and started a new family, something shifted. Suddenly, Tracy wasn't the center of attention. She was the older one. The responsible one. The one who was supposed to understand. That role can do something to a person. It teaches them to swallow feelings. To smile through resentment. To control instead of confront. The quiet power dynamic. Detectives began mapping family interactions, not just timelines. Who spoke to whom? Who mediated arguments? Who knew everyone's secrets? Tracy's name kept appearing. When Nick spiraled, Tracy visited. When Rob and Michelle argued, Tracy smoothed things over. When Romy felt overwhelmed, Tracy gave advice. She wasn't loud. She didn't demand authority. She occupied it. And that's far more dangerous. Nick and Tracy, a private language. The relationship between Nick and Tracy stood out immediately. Not affectionate. Not distant. Intimate. In a way that made people uncomfortable once they noticed it. Nick reportedly referred to Tracy as the only one who gets it. She sees the truth, he'd tell friends. She knows what they did. What did they do? No one could ever get a clear answer. But investigators noticed something else. Nick's worst episodes, his rants, his breakdowns, his sudden certainty, often followed contact with Tracy. Coincidence? Or influence? Ask yourself this. When someone is unstable, does it take force to push them? Or just validation? The therapist's concern. A sealed therapy note, fictionalized here for narrative purposes, became a focal point of speculation in this story. It described a patient who felt guided, reinforced, encouraged by a sibling figure who frames destructive thoughts as moral clarity. The note didn't name Tracy, but it didn't need to, because the description fit too neatly. The missed call. Remember the call Romy placed before dialing 911? Tracy didn't answer. That might mean nothing, or it might mean everything. Investigators couldn't stop circling back to one question. If Tracy knew something was wrong, if she sensed where Nick's state of mind was heading, why didn't she pick up? And if she didn't know, why did Romy try her first? The house without a trace. Here's where things became truly strange. Despite suspicions, despite theories, despite whispers, there was no forensic evidence placing Tracy inside the house that night. No fingerprints. No DNA. No confirmed entry on camera. Nothing. And yet, there were signs of preparation. A missing knife. A wiped surface. A timeline that felt curated. Almost like someone had been careful. Not frantic. Careful. Ask yourself, who stays calm in chaos? Who thinks ahead when emotions are running high? A pattern from the past. Friends from Tracy's earlier years painted a complex picture. They described someone intelligent, protective, loyal to a fault, but also controlling. She didn't raise her voice, one former acquaintance recalled. She made you feel like agreeing was your idea. That's a subtle power. The kind that doesn't leave bruises. The kind that leaves obedience. Romy's doubt. In later interviews, Romy would allegedly struggle with her own certainty. She loves Tracy, a source said. That's what makes it so hard. Love and suspicion don't coexist easily. But Romy couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Not because Tracy was cruel, but because Tracy was composed. Too composed. When tragedy hits, most people unravel. Tracy organized. She handled logistics. She redirected conversations. She discouraged questions. Not overtly. Gently. Two possible truths. By the end of this chapter in the story, investigators and audiences are left with two competing possibilities. 1. Tracy is innocent, a victim of circumstance. A woman being unfairly dragged into her family's worst nightmare. Or 2. She never touched a weapon because she didn't need to. Because influence doesn't leave fingerprints. Because words don't bleed. Because sometimes the most dangerous role isn't the one holding the knife. It's the one who convinces someone else to pick it up. And just as detectives thought they understood Tracy's role, a new detail surfaced. Something small. Something overlooked. Something found not in the house, but in the guest house. And once they saw it, the narrative shifted completely. Because what was discovered there suggested Tracy's connection to Nick wasn't just emotional. It was logistical, and that would change everything. What would you find if you opened a door you were never meant to open? That was the question detectives faced when they turned their attention to the quiet, ivy-draped guest house at the rear of the Reiner estate. It looked ordinary enough. Detached. Compact. Clean. But what they found inside didn't just raise eyebrows. It raised alarms. Because this wasn't just where Nick Reiner lived. This was where the plan may have begun. A home within a home. The guest house was Nick's sanctuary. Tucked behind the tennis court, it sat under a shaded canopy of trees, hidden just enough to feel separate, private. Too private. Most families use guest houses for visitors, staff, or temporary stays. But Nick had lived there for over 3 years. Why? That's what detectives asked when they stepped inside the night of the murders. And the answers came fast. Inside the mind of a man unraveling. At first glance, the interior was unremarkable. Minimal furniture. Mismatched dishes. Piles of scripts, some half-annotated, others scratched out in thick black Sharpie. But look closer, and the patterns emerged. Walls covered in taped-up photographs, many of them of Rob and Michelle. Some circled, some crossed out. Printouts of emails, allegedly between family members, with key sentences underlined in red. A single phrase, written on the wall above the bed in red ink. They made me. This wasn't a living space. It was a war room. Tracy's handwriting? Among the clutter, one notebook stood out. It was tucked under the mattress. When recovered and analyzed, several entries matched Nick's known handwriting. Erratic, furious, chaotic, but in the margins, a different pen, a different hand. Calm, neat, controlled. A forensic handwriting expert later confirmed. The marginalia matched previous samples from Tracy Reiner. The notes weren't long, just single lines, like whispered instructions. Don't lose focus. Remember what they did. Truth has no timetable. What were these? Encouragements? Triggers? Or something else entirely? A journal of two voices. The notebook painted a disturbing portrait. Not of violence. Of agreement. Two people aligned. Nick's entries were filled with pain, anger, and paranoia. Tracy's margin notes? They didn't refute him. They didn't reassure him. They validated him. Over and over again. Imagine you're barely hanging on to reality, and someone you trust most tells you you're right. Not crazy. Correct. What do you do with that kind of confirmation? The missing day. Detectives then zeroed in on the timeline leading up to the murders. Nick's phone GPS showed him at home for most of that Saturday. But around 3:12 p.m., his phone went offline. It remained dark for 5 hours. No location, no data, no messages. Then, at 8:06 p.m., it turned on again, pinging from the guest house. What happened in that window? A neighbor's outdoor cam offered a partial answer. The visitor. At 3:47 p.m., a woman was seen approaching the side gate of the property. Her face was obscured by a large sun hat and scarf, but the footage showed enough to trigger suspicion. A distinctive walking pattern, slight limp in the left leg. A floral scarf previously seen in Tracy's social media posts. A key used to open the side gate. The woman entered. She was not seen exiting. That is, not until 8:09 p.m., moments after the 911 call. The trash can clue. Outside the guest house, LAPD found something overlooked at first. A small, rolled-up garbage bag inside a locked trash bin. Inside, a pair of latex gloves, a surgical mask, and a burned matchbook from a boutique hotel near Topanga Canyon. The bag had been sprayed with bleach, but partial DNA was recovered, enough to create a profile, a match to Tracy Reiner. And just like that, what had been whispers became weight. Romy's private recording. In her grief, Romy did something unusual. She began recording voice memos on her phone, emotional reflections, thoughts, and suspicions. One such memo, recovered from her iCloud backup, included this quote. Nick always looked up to her. He followed her like a dog. I remember once he said, Tracy says they're not real parents. That stuck with me. Another entry, 3 days before the murders. They went for a walk. She came back smiling. He was quiet for hours after. That used to mean something was brewing. These weren't just casual thoughts. They were breadcrumb trails. The court-ordered search of Tracy's home. Days later, LAPD received a warrant to search Tracy Reiner's residence. They found nothing explosive. No murder weapon. No confession letter. But they did find a receipt for bleach and latex gloves, purchased 1 day before the murder. A printed copy of Rob's recent will. And a handwritten to-do list with the final item blurred under spilled coffee. They used forensic imaging to reveal the last line. Nick, Sunday, settle it. Settle what? And why Sunday? An interview gone wrong. Before the story went public, detectives approached Tracy for a voluntary interview. She agreed calmly. The session lasted 23 minutes. She didn't break. She didn't stutter. She smiled. When asked if she'd seen Nick that day, she said, not since Thursday, but I do worry about him. When they mentioned the guest house camera footage, her smile faded for a second, barely, then returned. I think you're reaching, she said. And then she asked, do I need a lawyer? That changed everything, because no one had mentioned charges yet. Only Tracy had. But the final clue, the one that would shatter the Reiner image for good, was still sitting in evidence, waiting to be decoded. A single voicemail, left on Nick's phone, seconds before the murders. And the voice on it was unmistakably Tracy's. What if the person you needed to trust the most was the one who saw everything and waited to speak? For days after the murders, Romy Reiner barely spoke above a whisper. Her world had shattered in seconds. She had walked into that house expecting a family dinner. She walked out with blood on her shoes, her parents gone, and her brother in handcuffs. But Romy had one thing the others didn't. A memory. A moment. A truth she'd buried under trauma, under doubt, under fear. And when she finally told the detectives, it turned everything upside down. The sister who knew too much. Romy had grown up in a house of legends. A-list parties, movie premieres, Sunday dinners with Morgan Freeman and Billy Crystal, birthday cakes shaped like film reels. To outsiders, it was a dream. But behind the closed doors, a hierarchy. Rob was the king. Michelle was the queen. Nick was the broken prince. And Tracy? Tracy was the keeper of the castle. She ran the family like a movie set, Romy once told a friend. Quiet. Efficient. Everything looked perfect, until you looked too close. And for years, Romy didn't look. Not until that week. The unsent message. We mentioned it before. The unsent text Romy had started typing before calling 911. It read, I told them about Tracy. I'm sorry. I couldn't keep lying. Detectives initially thought it was a coincidence, an emotional outburst. Something typed in panic. But it wasn't, because Romy had been preparing to tell the truth for weeks. She just didn't know if anyone would believe her. The walk. It started with a walk. Thursday afternoon, 3 days before the murder. Nick and Tracy walked through the back garden of the Brentwood estate. Romy watched from her upstairs window. She didn't think much of it until later, because that walk, it lasted exactly 47 minutes. And when Nick returned, something had changed. A coldness creeps in. That night, Romy made dinner. Her parents were out. Nick was supposed to join her. But when he came in from the guest house, he didn't greet her. He didn't speak. He just stood in the doorway, staring at the dining table. Then he muttered, "You know this is all fake, right?" Romy froze. "What are you talking about?" He smiled, half-smile. "The kind you can't read." She explained it. "Tracy, they're not who we think they are. None of this is." And then he walked out. The voicemail that was never meant to be heard. 3 days later, detectives retrieved a voicemail from Nick's phone. It had gone unplayed until now. It was left at 7:32 p.m., the night of the murders. Tracy's voice. Calm, measured, deliberate. "You've always known they weren't your real family. You've always felt it. This is your moment. Don't let guilt stop you from doing what's right." She paused. "They built their lives on lies, Nick. You're the correction." Click. That was it. No screaming. No panic. No warning. Just permission. Romy's flashback. In her second police interview, Romy shared something she had kept hidden. It was from the week before the murders. She and Tracy had coffee at a quiet cafe in Santa Monica. They talked about Nick's latest behavior, his instability, his obsession with rewriting family history. Tracy had nodded. Then she said something Romy had brushed off until now. "Sometimes, the best thing a family can do is tear down the illusion." Romy had laughed, thinking it was metaphor. Now, it felt like a threat. The family game night incident. Flashback to 2 months earlier. The Reiners hosted a game night. Romy, Nick, Tracy, Rob, Michelle. It was supposed to be fun. But by hour 2, things turned strange. Nick accused Rob of stealing his voice. Tracy didn't interrupt. Didn't correct him. Instead, she calmly asked, "What do you mean?" That opened the floodgates. Nick ranted, yelled, cried. Rob was furious. Michelle tried to soothe him. Romy was frozen. But Tracy? She just watched. Silent. Like she was cataloging the chaos. And later that night, Romy overheard her say to Nick, "It's time they learn they're not the heroes of this story." Romy's handshake moment. What pushed Romy over the edge wasn't the murder. It was what happened after. During a private family meeting with attorneys, for days after Rob and Michelle's death, Tracy finally showed up. She wore all black. No tears. No sniffles. No sunglasses to hide behind. Just poise. She walked up to Romy and extended her hand. Not for comfort. Not for sisterhood. For silence. "Let's not make this worse," Tracy whispered. "We can get through this together." And Romy understood. She wasn't being comforted. She was being handled. The memory that broke everything. Later that week, Romy began writing in her journal, something she hadn't done since childhood. She described the moment in vivid detail. But halfway through her entry, she stopped, and instead scrawled one sentence across the page. She knew, and she let it happen. Romy wasn't just mourning her parents anymore. She was mourning the sister she thought she had. Detectives lean in. Once Romy fully opened up, detectives changed course. This wasn't just about Nick. This was about orchestration. Influence. Manipulation without fingerprints. And Tracy's involvement, while murky, was growing clearer by the hour. Because every new revelation pointed to one thing. She was there. Maybe not in body, but in voice, in planning, in suggestion. And sometimes, that's all it takes. The diary that reinforced everything. One final piece came from an unexpected place. Michelle's personal diary, found in a locked drawer in the master bedroom. Most of it was mundane, recipes, reminders, social events. But one entry, dated 6 weeks before the murder, stood out. "Tracy's been spending too much time with Nick. I don't like it. He listens to her more than us. There's something dark forming there. I can feel it." And this line, "I wonder sometimes if she wishes we'd disappear." But detectives weren't done yet. Because the next person to step forward wasn't Romy. And it wasn't Tracy. It was a neighbor with a story no one had heard. One that took place the night before the murders. And what they saw in the Reiner backyard could not be explained away. When someone vanishes after a murder, it raises 2 questions. Are they in danger, or are they avoiding the truth? In the 72 hours following the Reiner murders, Tracy Reiner was nowhere to be found. Her phone went dark. Her car was missing. Her social media stayed silent. Not a single call to the LAPD. No post. No comment. No condolence. For a woman known for her calm control, her professionalism, and her meticulous public image, this wasn't just out of character. It was suspicious. Because while the rest of the Reiner family was reeling from the double homicide, Tracy didn't show up to cry. She disappeared. The moment she was expected. Tracy was supposed to be at the family attorney's office Monday morning at 10 a.m. The meeting had been scheduled days before, intended to go over Rob's estate and next-of-kin legal instructions in case of any emergency. A morbid but standard protocol among high-profile families. Romy was there. 2 attorneys were there. So was a court clerk. Tracy never showed. No text. No excuse. No cancellation. The assistant called her twice. Straight to voicemail. And that's when alarm bells started to ring. Detectives tried to make contact. LAPD officers attempted to call her. No answer. They sent a squad car to her Malibu home. The house was empty. Mail stacked at the door. Curtains closed. Lights off. Neighbors hadn't seen her since Friday. But one neighbor did remember something. The early morning departure. According to a Malibu resident who lived across from Tracy, a black Range Rover pulled out of her driveway around 5:15 a.m. Sunday morning, the day of the murders. Tracy was seen wearing a hoodie, sunglasses, and a baseball cap. Alone. She didn't return. That's the last time she was seen on her property. The abandoned car. On Tuesday afternoon, authorities received a tip. A black Range Rover, matching Tracy's plates, was found in the parking lot of a rundown Topanga Canyon motel. The car was clean. Too clean. Inside, a single takeout coffee cup, a burner phone, wiped, a bag containing a change of clothes. No fingerprints. No personal ID. But security footage from the motel's front desk offered more. The motel clerk's testimony. Detectives interviewed the night clerk, an older man who barely looked up from his crossword puzzle. When shown Tracy's photo, his response was instant. Yeah, she was here. Checked in under the name Laura Penman. Paid in cash. He added something even stranger. She asked if the room had a window facing the trees. Said she needed to watch the light. She stayed only a few hours. Checked out at 7:34 p.m. Sunday evening. Approximately 37 minutes before Romy's 911 call. Let that timeline sink in. Why leave? That's the question detectives kept asking. Why would a woman, poised, respected, mother of 5, vanish the day her parents were murdered? Unless she knew something. Unless she feared something. Or unless she was buying time. The bank footage that raised eyebrows. Another clue surfaced from an unexpected place. A Wells Fargo branch in Santa Monica reported an unusual withdrawal. On Saturday, the day before the murders, Tracy withdrew $60,000 in cash. Surveillance footage confirmed it was her. She looked calm. No disguise. No urgency. She even smiled at the teller. When asked by her bank manager why she needed the funds, she allegedly replied, "Family thing. Cleaning up a mess." The lawyer's confession. Tracy's longtime attorney, whose name is redacted for privacy in this dramatization, made a stunning statement under questioning. He admitted that on Saturday night, Tracy called him. She sounded calm, measured, and she asked one question. Hypothetically, if someone helped a family member conceal something they didn't do themselves, is that accessory or obstruction? He told her he couldn't advise without knowing more. She said, "Let's pretend it doesn't matter," and hung up. The surveillance tape nobody noticed. In re-examining the Reiner estate's side alley, investigators recovered footage from a neighboring property. At 8:10 p.m., the night of the murder, a figure was seen leaving the Reiner gate, walking briskly toward the side road. Too distant to confirm identity, but zoom analysis revealed the figure was wearing a dark hoodie, black jeans, white sneakers with a gold heel stripe. Why does that matter? Because 5 days later, detectives found that exact pair of sneakers. Where? The homeless encampment tip. A call came in from a local outreach worker. They'd found a woman's donation bag near a homeless encampment beneath the 405 overpass. Inside the bag, a hoodie, black jeans, white sneakers with a gold heel stripe. The tag inside the jeans read, TR, number 0037, Tracy's initials, and a number code consistent with her stylist's wardrobe system. That donation bag was left Monday morning, less than 12 hours after the murders. This wasn't grief. This was erasure. The call from Romy. Back at the station, Romy made one final attempt. She called Tracy, straight to voicemail. She didn't leave a message, but she later told detectives, if she really didn't do anything, why did she vanish? Why hide from me? From all of us? And her final line? She's not scared of Nick. She's scared of the truth coming out. The return. Then, without warning, Tracy returned. Thursday afternoon. For days after the murder, she walked into LAPD Wilshire Division in sunglasses and a trench coat. No lawyer. She said one sentence. I'm here to cooperate, but I won't be bullied. She sat down, asked for tea, and then requested a full transcript of every accusation made against her. Not denial, not outrage, control. But as she opened her mouth to speak, one detective reached into a folder and pulled out a single photo. The security cam still from the alley. The figure with the gold-striped shoes. He slid it across the table. And for the first time since the case began, Tracy Reiner's expression broke. What if the one thing someone left behind was never meant to be found? 3 days after Tracy Reiner returned to Los Angeles and calmly walked into the LAPD's Wilshire Division, a quiet knock echoed down the corridor of the homicide unit. It was just after midnight. No appointment. No name. No statement. Only an envelope. Plain. Sealed. No fingerprints. Inside it, a flash drive. Black. Unlabeled. Except for 2 handwritten letters etched in silver ink. TR. The envelope with no origin. Security footage showed a gloved hand sliding the envelope through the precinct door mail slot. That was it. No car. No visible face. No trail. It could have been anyone. A whistleblower. A family friend. Tracy herself. No one knew. And that uncertainty made what was on the drive even more unnerving. Because once the contents were decrypted, the case blew wide open. The first file, a whisper. The drive contained 5 audio files and 1 video. The first was quiet. Just ambient room noise. A chair creaking. The faint hum of an air conditioner. Then a voice. Female. Controlled. Tracy's. You said you wanted to know. I'll tell you. But you have to stop spiraling. You're not crazy, Nick. You're finally seeing it. A pause. Then, they lied to you your whole life. So stop crying. Stand up. You're not weak anymore. Click. That was it. File 2. The confession without a confession. The second file played more like a journal entry. Tracy again. Calmer. Reflective. They don't know I know about the will. About what they changed. About how they left you out. But I do. I saw it. I printed it. I'm not stupid, Nick. She continued. If the roles were reversed, they wouldn't protect you. They'd institutionalize you. You know that, right? Then came this chilling line. But I won't let that happen. I'll protect you. I always have. Click. Was this influence? Or incitement? To prosecutors, this was something new. Not a murder plot. Not a direct order. But permission. Subtle. Intentional. Powerful. Because when you're unstable, when your world feels like a lie, all it takes is someone you love telling you. You're right. That's gasoline. And Tracy? She was flicking the match. File 3. The pact. The third audio file was a conversation. 2 voices. Tracy. And Nick. The file began mid-sentence. Nick. I keep thinking about it, but I don't know how to even start. Tracy. Then don't start. Let it happen. Let them do what they always do. And this time, don't stop it. Just let the truth out. Nick. You really think I should? Tracy. Pause. I think you're the only one who can. Silence. Then. Tracy. You won't be alone. Click. Detective's dilemma. The team sat stunned. There was no go kill them line. No weapon talk. But the implication? Thick as concrete. This wasn't just a sister talking to a brother. This was a director behind the scenes, feeding the actor lines. The fourth file, the truth slips out. This one was different. It felt accidental. Tracy alone. She sounded distracted. Maybe recording a voice memo. Maybe talking into her phone, unaware it was being saved. If they find this, it doesn't matter anymore. It's done. I did what I had to do. I wasn't going to let them erase him. Not again. And if that makes me the villain, then fine. A long exhale. But they always underestimated me. They never thought I could be the one to burn it all down. Click. The final file. What Romy was never meant to hear. This file shook everyone. Because it was about Romy. Tracy's voice again. She's starting to suspect. She's not stupid. But she won't say anything. Not unless you push her. And don't push her, Nick. Don't. That's not what this is about. If she finds out, we'll deal with it. But she's not our enemy. She's just a kid. She still thinks there's a good guy in this family. Another pause. Then the voice dropped lower. Just don't let her get in the way. The video file. And then came the final blow. The only video on the flash drive. Blurry, dim, but clear enough. It showed the interior of the guest house. Nick sitting on the edge of his bed. Tracy standing by the window, arms crossed. "It's happening," Nick says. "Then don't hesitate," Tracy replies. "Are you sure? I'm not going to say it again." "Will you be there?" "I'll be close." Nick stands. Tracy walks over, puts her hand on his shoulder, whispers something. The audio doesn't catch it, but the tone? Chilling. She turns to leave, and as she walks out of frame, Nick whispers, "Okay, end of video." Chain of custody and the DA's reaction. When this footage was shown to the district attorney's office, a single question hung in the air. Is this enough to charge her? Not for murder, but for conspiracy. For influencing a mentally unstable individual to commit a violent act. But then came a twist. One of the assistant prosecutors noticed something in the corner of the video. A timestamp. The date? 1 week before the murder. Meaning Tracy didn't just know about the plan. She'd been there when it was spoken aloud. And she didn't stop it. She encouraged it. How did the flash drive appear? Theories exploded. Some believed Tracy herself left it to control the narrative, to get ahead of the media. Others believed Romy found it in a hidden folder and delivered it anonymously. One theory, that Nick made backups of his recordings without Tracy knowing, and that someone close to him turned it in. Either way, the drive had no metadata trail, just 5 files and one truth. Tracy Reiner was no longer just a person of interest. She was a person of consequence. But what prosecutors uncovered next, hidden in Rob's home office beneath a false floorboard, would erase any doubt. Because what they found wasn't digital. It was written, and it was signed by Tracy herself. What if the person you're protecting has already written down exactly how far they're willing to go? That was the question investigators asked themselves the moment they pulled a battered gray folder from the hidden floor panel beneath Rob Reiner's office bookshelf. It wasn't labeled. It wasn't filed. It was hidden, deliberately. Inside, handwritten notes, letters, and printed psychiatric records. Some from Nick's treatment centers, others from Tracy's. And at the very top of the stack, paper clipped tightly together, were 2 words scribbled in Rob Reiner's handwriting. Buried for a reason. The psychiatric files that were never meant to see daylight. The first set of documents came from Lakeside Wellness, a private psychiatric facility tucked away in Santa Barbara. Nick had spent several weeks there in early 2019, after what the family described publicly as a medical leave for emotional exhaustion. In truth, Nick had suffered a psychotic break. The doctors recommended full psychiatric evaluation and long-term therapy. But that's not what shocked investigators. It was the visitor logs. Because Tracy Reiner had visited the facility 6 times during Nick's stay, and not once was her name included in the official family record. She came under an alias. She stayed in the garden suite, and she brought envelopes. That's where the mystery deepened. Envelopes full of stories. According to a nurse's side note tucked into a file, Tracy delivered handwritten notes to Nick during each visit. One nurse's comment read, "Patient was visibly calmer after reading note. Referred to content as clarification from my sister. They're not the ones I thought they were." Another note. After visit, patient expressed strong distrust of parental figures. Claimed they were hiding something from him, and that his sister was helping uncover the truth. And in Nick's journal, recovered later by police, one entry stood out. She brought the proof. It's not a delusion if someone else sees it too. Proof of what? That was the question. And the answer was layered. A parallel file, Tracy's evaluation. In the hidden folder were also pages from Tracy's own psychiatric evaluation, dated 2013. Conducted voluntarily after a period of burnout, the documents weren't alarming at first, until you reach the therapist's note under perceptual bias and narrative control. Client exhibits extreme confidence in her ability to reframe others' emotional experiences. Tends to redirect blame and guilt away from core self. Expresses belief that some individuals are not worthy of full truth. And another line. Refers to emotional influence as a skill. Quote, "I can get anyone to do anything if I just listen enough." Let that sit with you. This wasn't someone simply supporting a broken sibling. This was someone with a clinical history of manipulation, documented. The letters to Rob. Buried beneath the evaluations were 3 letters. All handwritten. All from Tracy. And all unsent. They read more like diary entries than correspondence, like she had written them with the intention of giving them to Rob, but never followed through. In one, she writes, "I don't know why you never really looked at me the same after Nick came along. Maybe because I wasn't broken enough. Maybe because I didn't make you feel needed." Another, "If he loses it, I'll help him find it again. But if he breaks, I won't be the one who cleans up this time. You will. You and her." And finally, the most chilling line of all, "You created this. I just gave it shape." Nick's decline, documented. According to the psychiatric timeline, Nick's behavior began shifting dramatically following a weekend retreat with Tracy in Palm Springs, 2020. Prior to that, he had made steady progress. Post-retreat, his therapist noted, patient returned expressing deep distrust of therapy process, claimed emotional abuse by parental figures, referred to new memories he didn't have before. Investigators flagged this line. Patient stated, "Tracy showed me the papers. It's real. I'm not crazy. I'm their mistake." What papers? What memories? No one knows for sure. But every breadcrumb leads back to one source. The shared delusion theory. Forensic psychologists working the case began leaning toward a rare but documented psychological phenomenon. Folie à deux. Madness of two. A shared psychosis. One dominant figure, Tracy. One susceptible individual, Nick. The stronger individual impresses their delusional beliefs onto the more vulnerable one, until those beliefs become shared reality. In this case, Tracy may have planted the idea that Rob and Michelle betrayed Nick, that they planned to erase him from the family, to silence him, to institutionalize him. Whether any of it was true didn't matter. Nick believed it, and that belief had a body count: the audio therapy files. As part of the psychiatric evidence, police subpoenaed audio therapy recordings, with legal permission, from Nick's final sessions in late 2020. In one, the therapist asks, "Why do you think your parents are trying to cut you off?" Nick replies, "Because Tracy told me. She showed me their plans. She said I could finally end the lie if I just listened." The therapist gently pushes back. "What lie, Nick?" And Nick whispers, "That I was ever part of them. She said I was a secret. Something they regretted." He pauses. "But I'm not their shame. I'm their reckoning." Click. Rob's last journal entry. The last page of Rob Reiner's private journal, also found in the hidden compartment, was dated 2 days before the murder. In rushed handwriting, he scribbled, "They've been meeting again. Tracy isn't calming him. She's feeding something. I don't recognize my own son anymore. Or her." And the final line, "If I don't write this down, no one will believe me." She's not here to heal him. She's here to finish something. Romy's confrontation. After the files were reviewed, Romy was brought in for comment. She read the letters, the notes, the clinical entries. She cried for nearly an hour. Then she said something simple. I think she loved him. I think she thought she was saving him. A pause. Then, colder. But she knew what she was doing. You can't call it love when someone dies at the end of it. But what truly confirmed Tracy's dissent wasn't in the files. It wasn't in the notebooks or the voice memos. It was on a credit card statement. A strange, single purchase made just 1 week before the murders. A black trench coat, a pair of gloves, and a theater-quality makeup kit. What happens when a family legacy worth over $100 million turns into a motive and a trap? For decades, the Reiner family name was synonymous with power, creativity, and legacy. Movies, awards, political influence. They weren't just famous. They were entrenched. But beneath the smiles and speeches, money was shaping something darker. Because long before the blood was spilled, the battle over the Reiner fortune had already begun. And Tracy Reiner wasn't just in the will. She had every reason to reshape it. The will nobody saw coming. After Rob and Michelle's deaths, the family's legal team began sorting through the estate. And what they uncovered shocked even those closest to the couple. Just 6 weeks prior to the murders, Rob Reiner had made significant, private changes to his will. Nick Reiner's inheritance was drastically reduced. Romy was named as primary executor. A sizable chunk of assets was moved into a legacy protection trust, shielding it from any direct family claims. And Tracy? Her share remained. But the language changed. From equal distribution to discretionary disbursement. Which means she'd only get it if Romy approved. Why the change? Legal advisors close to Rob claimed he had grown increasingly wary of family tensions. He expressed concern that Tracy and Nick had become a unit, and that their combined influence could destabilize the family. He allegedly told one advisor, "I can't let sentiment cloud structure. This isn't a script. This is protection." He went on, "Tracy's smart. She always has been. But lately, smart looks a lot like strategic." Tracy's reaction. In a recovered email sent from Tracy to a former family associate just days after the will change, she wrote, "He thinks he's cutting me out. He thinks I don't know. But I see the game board." And this line, "Money doesn't build loyalty, but it does by silence." For a time, the $60,000 cash withdrawal. We already know Tracy withdrew $60,000 in cash the day before the murders. Now we know why it matters. Bank security cameras captured her dressed elegantly, no signs of distress, collecting the bills in person. She signed the receipt. She smiled. When asked by the bank manager about the large sum, she reportedly said, "For security. Some people only listen when there's something to lose." Those words now feel like a clue disguised as a shrug. Who was she trying to pay? Or was she preparing to disappear? The trust fund that didn't exist anymore. In a twist that caught Tracy off guard, one of the accounts she believed was left to her, specifically a $4.2 million film development fund Rob had once promised, had already been transferred to Romy's trust under new legal language. In the clause, Rob wrote, "For Romy to develop true art, untouched by external influence." Tracy, a lifelong actress and producer, was omitted entirely from that portion. When confronted about it in private, Romy claimed Tracy said, "He gave you what I earned, and you don't even know what to do with it." Romy replied, "Maybe he finally saw what you were doing." The business documents Tracy didn't know were found. Among Rob's office files, investigators discovered business correspondence Tracy had attempted to hide. Internal communications between Tracy and a lesser-known investor named Paul Medlow, discussing an independent production company she was planning. The name? Second Act Pictures. The company had already been quietly registered under a shell LLC in Delaware. Projected budget, $3.1 million. And the seed funding? Expected from family assets, words she used in emails. But after Rob changed the will, the funding was gone. The business stalled. And Tracy's dream dissolved. A pattern of financial pressure. Investigators followed the money trail, and it wasn't just about the production company. Tracy had recently taken out a $250,000 line of credit against a vacation home in Big Bear, missed 2 property tax deadlines, canceled a private school enrollment for one of her children, citing unexpected restructuring. On the surface, she looked stable, but underneath, her finances were crumbling. And when you're one step away from losing it all, an inheritance becomes more than a gift. It becomes a lifeline. Control in the family dynamic. Detectives interviewed multiple family insiders. One quote stood out. Tracy didn't just want her share. She wanted to decide who got what. Another said, she always believed she knew better than Rob. He had the fame, but she had the plan. That was her thing, control. This wasn't about revenge. This was about correction. A course she felt needed to be set, and Rob's new will. It threw her off balance. The Romy factor. When Romy was named executor, Tracy's influence diminished overnight. For decades, Tracy was the family compass. But now, the power to distribute tens of millions was in Romy's hands. And Romy, sweet, idealistic, grieving, wouldn't be manipulated. Tracy allegedly called her after the new will was revealed and said, "Dad just made you the bank. Let's see how well you manage the vault." A joke or a warning? And then came the call. Remember that mysterious call between Nick and Tracy? The one captured in the now infamous flash drive recording? In it, Tracy says, "They've changed the map, Nick. We don't get to just follow it anymore. We have to redraw it." Redraw it. That's not the language of grief. That's the language of strategy. The theater makeup kit. And then there's this. On Tracy's credit card history, investigators found a purchase dated 6 days before the murders. A professional makeup kit. A black trench coat. And latex facial adhesives, used by actors for prosthetic disguises. When asked about the purchase, Tracy said it was for a costume party. But the items were never recovered. What costume? And why buy it alone? The check she tore up. In the trash can behind the guest house, under layers of debris, detectives found something else. A torn check. Dated. Signed. Made out to Nick Reiner. Amount, $100,000. In the memo line, second act seed. It was never cashed. Never meant to be. So why write it? Was it bait? A bribe? Or just another move in a longer game? But it was the clause at the very bottom of the will, the one Rob added in handwriting, that shattered everything. A single line. Not typed. Scrawled with blue ink. If anything happens to me, look at who gains the most. That clause would become the rallying cry for prosecutors.